Helldivers 2 has caught fire, at least the server rooms have, with day-over-day concurrent player numbers going even higher as more players just want to play this game. And man, what is it with 2024 and independent and indie studios just laying waste to the video game industry with far less employees than many of their AAA counterparts? You'll love to see it. But with that kind of success comes its fair share of criticism, and Helldivers 2 has been getting theirs. Some of it warranted, some of it not. So today what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about everything Helldivers 2, from its servers to its engine to the future of the game. So let's drop in and spread some managed democracy. The gaming industry has recently been witnessing this significant shift towards independent projects and indie studios like Helldivers 2, Palworld, and most recently Last Epoch, achieving unprecedented success and high concurrent player numbers. These indie titles are not only matching, but in some cases surpassing the popularity of traditional AAA titles. This surge in popularity, however, has come with its fair share of challenges, notably server issues that have left players unable to access the games that they have paid for. I expect a seamless experience, especially when I've not only invested my time and my money, but also my enthusiasm in some of these games. The anticipation and excitement of diving into a new experience, a promising title, especially one that I am currently enjoying, only to be met with connectivity issues, is incredibly frustrating. However, I try to understand the context in which these indie developers operate, and I think it's crucial to have a balanced perspective. Many independent studios are small teams working with limited resources and budgets. While they aim to deliver the best possible experience, predicting the scale of their game's success is growing more challenging year over year. Unlike AAA studios, which have vast resources and experience in handling large-scale launches, indie developers do not have the infrastructure or the foresight to anticipate overwhelming player numbers. Moreover, scaling up server capacity isn't as a straightforward solution as many players believe it to be. It involves intricate planning around hardware, software, network capabilities, and security measures. Simply just adding more servers can be a temporary fix, but it doesn't necessarily address the underlying issues such as load balancing, game stability, server optimization, and ensuring a stable connection for players worldwide. Additionally, the back-end architecture of a game, especially one designed to be handled by a global player base, is complex, and that's the issue that Helldivers 2 faces. It requires continuous monitoring, updates, and sometimes significant overhauls to cater to increasing demand. These changes demand time, expertise, and more importantly, funding, which can be a major stretch for many of these independent studios who might already be operating on tight margins. For context, Helldivers 2 had a peak concurrent player count of 6,744 players. Helldivers 2 just yesterday reached 457,649 players. It's like posting an ad for a yard sale and the entire city showed up. Sure, you can accommodate, but it's going to take time and resources that you just don't have. Something that further compounds the issue on Arrowhead's side is the fact that the game's engine is reportedly built on a engine that was discontinued back in 2018. The game is using the same engine as Helldivers 1, as they already had years of development in Helldivers 2 and just continued forth because they didn't have the experience with another engine and couldn't afford to switch mid-development. At the end of the day, we paid money, and we don't have to understand or be understanding of the challenges that these studios face in these kind of times, because we should be getting what we paid for. But in that same breath, I personally don't hold those same expectations that I would for a AAA company, because I don't go to a family-owned restaurant expect the exact same capacity, speed, and efficiency as I would at a larger chain or corporatized restaurant. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that you have to adopt that type of thinking, but I do believe as consumers, it's our responsibility to have some kind of context from the purchases that we make. And Last Epoch's going through the exact same thing. Palworld even went through the exact same thing to some effect. And looking at Last Epoch specifically, They had an early access period of over a year where their concurrent player numbers were maybe 3,000 to 5,000 players. They go to their 1.0 launch and over 150,000 players show up at the door. So yeah, there's going to be some problems. And I feel like we should probably expect that, but the issue is that we're not always keyed in on these specific numbers, knowing this kind of background, or even knowing that these companies are small to begin with. And I think that these studios realize that these frustrations, and I realize it as well, that the frustrations that many of the people have with not being able to get into the game are coming from a place of love, because we just want to get into the game. That's the reason why we're frustrated. We want to play it, which is a good problem to have. And from the studio's perspective, they want us in the game as much as we want to be in there. Luckily, Arrowhead just put out a patch that will alleviate much of the server issues that the game has been facing by putting in an AFK timer, so those people who have been flaunting the fact that they've been going to sleep and going to work while staying logged into the game will no longer be there, clogging the pipeline and keeping others from coming into the game. Each update that Arrowhead has released has targeted server stability and matchmaking, as those are the two main issues that the game has been facing. Broadly speaking, I haven't really had very many issues with the game whatsoever, other than just having to wait a while before logging into the game. One time I dropped with no weapons, and another time I got stuck trying to pick something up, but those issues were fixed, and were fixed relatively quickly. With that said, I understand people's frustrations, but I can't really get behind the wave of repetitive bad reviews or known issues that are tanking the game down to mixed reviews on Steam, only to just finally get pushed back up to mostly positive 2 days later. While the reviews are justified, it doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do, nor that it's going to actually help the game. I've even seen people posting on Twitter calling for the review scores of the game to be docked to reflect the current state of the game. Personally, I find this approach to revisionism troubling, especially in an era where we've been advocating for more transparency from game reviewers. It's my belief that a review should serve as a snapshot of that reviewer's experience and an assessment of the game at the time that they played it. If a reviewer found enjoyment and value in the game, their review should mirror those sentiments, irrespective of the future developments or issues that happen to the game post-publication. Adjusting reviews based on post-launch technical issues such as server downtime introduces a slippery slope that undermines the credibility and consistency of video game reviews, which haven't been all that consistent or credible for a long time, but I do feel like they have been getting better as of recently. Today, it might be server issues. Tomorrow, it might be something entirely different, leading to a scenario where reviews are in a state of constant flux, responding to every update or hiccup. This not only confuses the readers, but it also detracts from the core purpose of a review, to evaluate the game's content, mechanics, story, and overall enjoyment factor. While it's crucial for reviewers to acknowledge significant issues that are happening with the game, that should be happening in other types of content, in follow-up articles and things like that. I just think people are going overboard with this. I understand people's frustrations, but trying to go and have people revise their review scores based on what's happening with the game right now just doesn't make any sense. And by the way, I've seen the comments on my last video. There was hundreds of them. But the servers, this has to be shilling. This is just more YouTubers pushing games that aren't actually good, trying to get sales. This guy is paid. I'm still trying to unpack the mental gymnastics of a small Swedish game studio paying a YouTuber with less than 50,000 subscribers and an incredibly volatile viewership to promote their game and put it in a good light so that they get more money in return. Does every single industry have an Illuminati now? You know what? Let's continue on. We're going to talk about everybody's criticisms of the game in its current state and what's coming in the future. Some of the most common complaints that I've seen are coming from people that I don't think are actively playing Helldivers 2 or have even played the game at all. I've seen things like the game lacks story, it's repetitive, there's no weapon customization, and this game will die in a few weeks. I don't understand why people are saying that they're having fun playing it. Now, I really do hope that people understand that this game is a live service game that's only a couple weeks old. But with that said, I think I know where some of this misunderstanding is coming from. In response to the server issues, on one of my last videos, a commenter said, I think the issue with a lack of foresight is people assuming it's a Sony title, not a title of, whatever small company apparently made it. Like, I straight up assumed that this was a multi-billion-dollar company not putting enough money into their servers to support even 1/10 of its player base until like 5 minutes ago. And while I'm not talking about the servers right now, I think this line of thought reflects many of the criticisms that the game has faced so far. They see Sony on the load screen, the visuals and the mechanical quality of the game, and they think it's a massive AAA game when it's not. Expectations for this game aren't congruent with the scope of the game nor the size of the company that made it. And I think that that's something that's going to get worse as time goes on. As players are opting to play more of these games that are made by smaller studios, they're coming with the same expectations that they've made over playing all of these different AAA titles. And just to give an example, I've seen many people in the Destiny 2 community get involved with Helldivers 2, and many people are drawing similarities between the two games, thinking that Helldivers 2 is going to be the new top dog of live service games in replacing Destiny 2. However, these games are completely different from one another. They don't even have any really similar mechanics whatsoever. There are parts of it that are similar, but for the most part, they're two completely different games. But we have players that are coming from a wider, more broader part of the market that are coming to play a smaller studio's game, but they're not coming with that context of this is a smaller studio. They're just coming with the context of this is the game that everybody's playing. This is the game that everybody says is the next big game. Now, that's not to say that Helldivers 2 can't rise to meet these player expectations. And in fact, I think that's exactly what they're going to do. Now, the criticisms of lack of story, weapon depth, and repetitive mission structure and enemy variety, these are things that are a part of Arrowhead's roadmap as the game gets through its monthly live service updates. A Twitter user recently posted saying, "I have one question. Is there a story in Helldivers 2? Because right now, all I can see is that you drop and kill random planet for absolutely no reason. It start with some lore, but after that, it's pretty dead." The CEO of Arrowhead Games responded saying, "Yes and no. The game is a setting. The evolution of the title tells a story, and the actions that the community make tells that story. So more like a pen and paper RPG has a story and less movie." So imagine, if you will, Helldivers 2 is an interactive canvas. Instead of developers painting a single unchanging picture, they're inviting the game's community to pick up brushes and contribute to the artwork. Every mission completed, every decision made, and every interaction between players adds a stroke to this ever-evolving painting. The developers then observe the collection of actions, in response, introduce new events and missions that reflect the direction that the community is taking the game. This creates a dynamic narrative environment where the story is not just something that you're passively consuming, but something you are actively a part of. Here's how the practice works. If the player community shows a strong inclination towards liberating a certain planet or aggressively engaging a specific enemy faction, the developers might introduce new missions that expand upon that element, deepening the lore around it and challenging players with new obstacles that feel directly influenced by the actions that they've taken. Similarly, if players collaborate to achieve a monumental task, a global monumental task, the game could evolve to reflect that achievement in its world, acknowledging the player's impact on the game's universe. This approach mirrors storytelling dynamics of pen and paper RPGs, where the narrative isn't fixed, but instead it is shaped by the player's actions and decisions, with the game master, in this case the developers, facilitating the story's progression based on player choices. It's a living story, one that grows and changes over time, driven by the community as collective actions are taken, making the game's universe feel vibrant, reactive, and deeply personal to those who have been a part of it. Part of this evolution is the inevitable introduction of content that has appeared in the first Helldivers. This is going to be new equipment, new weapons, new enemies like the Illuminate or faction bosses that also appeared in Helldivers 1. Big enemies like the Illuminate Great Eye. There was the Bug Hive Lord, or the Cyborg Siege Mech. Many different bosses that are incredibly challenging and some of the most difficult content that the game had to offer. Now, along with these new threats are going to come ways for us to deal with them, giving players a new and wider arsenal of stratagems, weapons, armor, and eventually mechs and vehicles. The game is going to grow, and with how well the game's launch has gone, it's going to grow relatively quickly as they are already seeking to hire more developers to support the game. I think that while some of these player concerns are warranted, I have a sneaking suspicion that many of these issues are coming from players being programmed to play live service games as efficiently as possible because of the other games that they played in the past, which would lead them to feel like this game doesn't have enough content straight out of the gate. Helldivers 2 is designed from the ground up to be a community game, a game that is played with friends. It's a simple loop, but it's a low bar of entry just to have a good time with a group of friends or a group of strangers. Not every game needs to have raids, random loot, and stats to grind. Sometimes it's nice to just sit back, have fun, and not tell your friends about the minefield that you just laid right around the corner. One of the things that I really have enjoyed about all of these indie and independent studios having success and their games becoming more popular are some of the conversations that have started because of that success. A user over on Twitter wrote, "New game goes trending. It's developer. This is what happens when you let us make the games that we want to make. We hope it's gonna inspire the whole industry, every other publisher. See that new trend? Can you just make that but with RIP?" The CEO responded saying, "Ouch, agreed. Be inspired by the why and how, not the what." And I think that's why I find some of the criticisms disheartening and the lack of faith disheartening. Though I realize that some of these people are probably just regular naysayers that troll the internet day by day. But with that said, the things that are happening as a result of these independent and indie studios finding such great success is that it's shaking the foundations that the AAA industry has set down. This belief that they just have to keep making the same thing over and over and over again, and that's the safest and best way for them to keep making money. But at the end of the day, that's not really what's leading to the success of many other companies. Some of these other guys are coming out with games that aren't repetitive, that may be influenced by other games in the past, but are completely unique experiences that we are falling in love with, and all that money is getting funneled towards them. Now, that's not to say I don't want this money funneled towards these companies, but I do think it shows the rest of the industry that they're walking down the wrong path. Look, I make videos like this specifically because I realize that many consumers that are out there, many gamers that are out there, don't follow every single article that comes out about a game. They don't probably even follow many of these studios on Twitter or anything like that. And I just try to do my best to be able to present as much information as I possibly can so that we're making educated purchases. And largely, when I'm looking at these indie studios, I'm making an educated purchase knowing what I'm getting myself into. And I think that many other people don't. When they're coming to some of these smaller studios and smaller games, they're expecting the exact same quality and experience that they would get from AAA, even though they don't really give us even the highest quality experience either. But you get the point. You get what I'm saying. There's certain expectations that I think we should have as consumers for different varied levels of businesses in an industry. We don't expect the same things from one business to the next. And you're welcome to expect those things, and it's your right to do so with your money. But I just think it's nice to have a little bit of context from time to time. I think that this game has an incredibly bright future. And with the amount of success that they've had already, as well as just the quality of the game at launch, and also how well they supported their last game with Helldivers 1, and it wasn't even all that popular, this game's going to get even more support and probably blow up even bigger than we can imagine. I would imagine by the time a few months have passed, it's not even going to be recognizable with all the different content that they'll inject into the game. From what I heard from their developers, the mechs are already ready. They're just getting ready to deploy. I can't wait for that. Anyway, I'm still prepping for my review on Helldivers 2, as well as a couple other ones as well. So if you guys are looking forward to content like that or want me to continue covering Helldivers 2 into the future, let me know in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching the last video. Thank you guys for watching this one. If you want to support the channel, think about supporting me on Patreon. The link will be down below. Outside of that, my friends, stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe, and most of all, make sure you're out there spreading democracy. Peace.
Family, 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 family.